What better way to start the new year than to, if anything, remind you of the relationship agreement? This is something that I've talked about before, I'm sure many times. So it may be a reminder to you, or it may be something that you've never heard. You may be a new listener. You may have been referred by a friend, and already 60 seconds in, you're having second thoughts because of the parrots in the background. Um, the relationship agreement. We will both understand that there will be days we can't stand each other. There will be days you will want to punch me in the face, and I will want to take the long way home. We will disagree on things like movies and dinner and what kind of car we should buy next. I will forget things. You will run late. Our friends will have opinions of us. You will have questions. We will fight, maybe a lot. You will shut down. I will wonder. But at the end of the day, we will both come back to each other, and your head will always fall back on my chest. And no matter how many times we fight, we will always fight fair. That will be a non negotiable. And we will be together knowing that we are choosing to, not because of logic, of age or loneliness, not because we've already committed to this, not because we don't want to be alone, not because we have a child, but because we believe in us and make a choice every single day to be in this and love each other the best way we know how. Our relationship will not be built on fear, as many are, but like many relationships, ours will also be hard. We are both aware of this and have committed to exploring and examining self. And we are both different people today. So we won't let what was affect what is. We will not compare us to anyone else, including our exes or our previous blueprints of love. Any residue we have from our past relationships, we will work on individually. It is our own responsibility and what being in something healthy looks like. We will sharpen each other and work through our own activation. The only thing we can promise is to be honest and love as hard as we can with the life wisdom we have acquired. We both know there is risk. We both know we can get hurt, but we are willing to put that on the line to experience the high notes of something meaningful, something new. And finally, we will build a space for magic and settle for nothing less. What do you think about that? What comes up for you as I was reading this to you, the relationship agreement? When I think about this, like if I was to take a highlighter to this, so many things comes up. But one of the things I would say is, we could go through this, but um, one, the fact that there's going to be conflict, right? And the non-negotiable being that we will fight fair. This is and let me talk about what fighting fair looks like, because I think many people think, oh yeah, I fight fair. I listen. Um, it's not like I walk out of the room. I don't stonewall. I give my partner an opportunity to express himself or herself, and of course I fight fair. But let me give you a different definition of possibly fighting fair. Fighting fair also means that you are looking at your own shit. Fighting fair also means that not only are you creating a safe space, but you are exploring your defensiveness. You know, I think we're not aware of this, but we are defensive, and that defense comes from uh, hurt, comes from fear, comes from activation, comes from our own stories. And so to be responsible of that piece. Now, listen, you don't have to agree. I don't agree with everything that um, my partner and I talk about, right? But I do think that both of us have a responsibility to look at our own shit. Now here's where magic can happen, because if you're with someone who you know and trust will look at their own shit, there is so much trust that can be built. And I'm not talking about like, I want proof. I don't want receipts to therapy. I don't want to see what self-help books you bought. I don't want you to come back with revelations. You just trust that this person will uh, look at their own thing, whatever's coming up, instead of blaming, assassinating character, getting together with friends and mimosas and talking shit about you and how unhappy she is in a relationship. You just trust that this person is exploring their piece, right? Uh, and this trust is built over time, like it's earned, like anything. And but if you have two people who are on the same page, and their first response to conflict is, okay, let me pull back and let me look at my piece in this. I mean, it's just rare. It's so rare. And I'm not saying it's easy, but that is foundational. And I've learned over the last 15, 20 years that if you have two people who trust each other enough based on pattern and history, that after the fight, they will review whatever their contribution was, right, to the fight, and also how it's tied to their story, where it's coming from. They will take ownership in their own activation. They'll be less defensive. Like, if this is just kind of like I know I know for a fact that I know how my mom will respond to things, and I'll bet 100, I'll bet my my house on it that she will respond. Like, for example, my mom, just because she's a boomer, she's old school. Um, if I crack my windows, right? If I don't roll my windows all the way up, she will she can't bite her tongue. She can't just notice it. She will remind me. And I think part of it is just because I'm the the youngest sibling. I'm always going to be her baby, no matter how old I am. And so she will say, roll the windows up. Robbery, someone's going to rob your car. Or roll the windows up, it's going to rain. Even if because I crack my windows, because we live in Los Angeles and it gets hot and I don't want the car to be hot. So I'm always cracking my windows like an inch. She will, every time she sees my windows cracked, she will say, roll your windows up, right? I know that with certainty. I trust that because she has over and over proved me right. Um, if you have a relationship where you trust it that much, if you have a relationship where based on patterns and history, that your partner will at least look at their own thing, their own shit, what they've contributed, um, that amount of safety, I think, is next level. So anyway, my point is, the non-negotiable, the fighting fair isn't just that you're creating a safe space, or you're listening, or you're validating. I mean, yes, of course, all of that. But the taking responsibility, taking ownership, this is where the needle moves. This is where people change. This is where relationships can have its own death and rebirth, right? And this is where bridges are created and trust is built. These are like bricks. This is foundational. And this is also where most people drop the ball, right? I heard you, but, I heard you, but, and the defensiveness over time flips the magnet. It changes the chemistry. It creates drift, right? And so when I talk about the relationship agreement, um, yes, fighting fair, but taking responsibility. That is, and I think here's the other piece: is we can suggest, but we can't really determine what responsibility looks like for our partners, right? That's the other piece. So I can't say, okay, this is what fighting fair looks like. You do this, and I will do this. And if you don't do that, then I'm not going to do this. Here's what you need to look at. I used to be that way. I used to think like, oh, this isn't fair. I'm looking at my shit. Why isn't she looking at hers? Now, you can have a conversation about it, right? You can say, "Hey, here's some things that I'm going to look at, and I would love for you to look at some of these things." But you can't set a timer. You can't remind the person. You know what it's like. I've over my 51 years on this planet, and I think starting at early 20s, being in relationships for most of my life. Um, this idea of subtly controlling your partner, right? I always feel like I don't control my partner. I never tell my partner what to do. But have I subtly? Of course. Of course. Fitness is a big part of my life. And the people I've dated, that may not have been the case. And of course um it I would want them to work out with me, or I'd want them to move in some way. And even though I don't say it, it leaks subtly. Subtly, I'll make little, "Hey, do you have an hour today? Why don't you go do yoga, or why don't you?" And it's a form of control. You know, I still do it today, and I still have to look at it. Now, at the same time, I really enjoy. It's one of my favorite things to do is to go sweat with my partner, right? So there is truth. There is a not controlling, but inviting, right? And I have to know when I'm inviting and when I'm controlling, because if the person doesn't want to, I have to fully accept that. And if I don't, then there's subtle control, right? I've also learned um, when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to sex, I've always had a high libido. What is invitation and what is control? For most of my life, I have controlled. For most of my life, I have pouted. For most of my life, if we're not intimate or on my terms, or when I want it or how much I want it, um, I I I may not threaten. I may not, say something verbally, but in energy, in tone, in mood, um, it's very telling that I'm, hurt or frustrated or whatever. And my ownership in that is to self-soothe, is to take care of myself, is to not be angry, right? I could also, have a conversation. I could also express. It doesn't mean that I'm supposed to be mute, but it is my responsibility. You know, I uh, I was with many people. I have been with many people where they have not expressed how they felt, and they have pushed down feelings. The intention was good because they didn't want to rock the boat, or they didn't want to upset me, but the consequences were not good. And their responsibility in that is to realize that that is something they need to do more. They need to put more reps in that, because they have not, and because they have not, and because they have a story, and because they have weren't able to express themselves or their feelings growing up. It's foreign to them. It's foreign to them, and it's a weak muscle, right? So that's their responsibility. Anyway, my point is there's nuance. My point is there are things in relationships, when it comes to conflict, that is not obvious, and it's the less obvious stuff, right? That's the thousand paper cuts. That's the stuff that really over time gets people to um, eventually change how they feel about each other, right? Eventually, feelings will change. So this is what we need to earn. I mean, what we need to own, the subtle things, and we really have to be honest with ourselves. Another thing I wanted to highlight is that our relationship will not be built on fear, as many are. So many relationships, speaking of activation, comes from us being afraid. That fear can be uh, fear of intimacy. That fear can be fear of me losing my sense of self because I have been codependent. So I'm going to create distance. That fear can be fear of abandonment, right? If I get too close, they may leave. So I'm going to love from a distance. We all have fears because we all have a story. So what is your fear in the relationship? It's not your partner's job to dissolve that fear. Now, your partner can listen, can understand, can be empathetic, can support, champion, um, but it's your own job to be aware of the fear and start dissolving it. You know, many people love with fear. Many people um, love from a distance, or they're too tight, or they're clinging to you, right? And all of this comes from being afraid, and all of this comes from us, growing up in unsafe spaces with insecure attachment. So we have anxiety and fear in relationships. We must work through that ourselves. And I think it's important that we also share that with our partner. I think it's important that we share that with our partner. So we're doing the journey kind of together. Um, and we're sharing this story. We're not using our story to control our partner, if that makes sense. Anyway, thank you for listening, and put this relationship agreement in your back pocket. Maybe save this episode and replay it back. I know it's helpful for me to look at it once in a while and ask myself, okay, this is the agreement, and am I doing these things, or am I not doing these things, right? Am I breaking this kind of contract? Not only is it an agreement to my partner, but it's also for myself, my own growth, my own sense of self, right? I hope this episode was helpful. Thank you for listening. Be well.